It seems like it's been forever since we've been face to face, and I can't wait until we can have sessions and meetings like this where we can fellowship together with one another like we used to in the past. We have a slew of guests this morning to go over some student fee regulations, take questions from the audience, and then help us really determine the direction that many of our institutions are going to be deciding to as it relates to student fees and in the future. So with us, we'll start it off by introducing Ms. Elizabeth Grumenstein. She's the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer here at the System Office. We also have Ms. Brandy Andrews, who's the Associate Vice President of College Finance and Operations. And lurking in the shadows, I think I saw Ms. Burgess as well. Ms. Brenda Burgess is the Associate Director of Student Aid, and we have her here just for some questions as it relates to how student fees may impact student aid and things of that nature. And so with that, I will allow them to take the floor and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. Am I able to share my screen? I'm going to try it. I think it will allow me. Great. What I thought I would do is kind of walk everybody through how you can access our state board policies regarding student fees and kind of walk through some of that information, as well as the fee report that we have available. And then we will hope to try to be able to answer some questions that you have. And again, Brandy Andrews is with me as well. So the two of us will kind of tag team on this, but I'm going to kick us off here. Hopefully you're already familiar with the Community College System website. ncommunitycolleges.edu. So I'm just going to show you how you can come up on this website and find policies that our colleges have to follow based on our State Board of Community Colleges policies. So we call that the State Board Code, and you'll go up here to the website and you will go to the State Board link. And then from that link, you're going to go to the State Board of Community Colleges code, which is down here on this page. JJ, are y'all still seeing the screen on your end? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, when you get to the State Board of Community College Code, this is a large document that has lots and lots of policies in it. You can see up here, it's a 282 page long document. So if you want to have the whole document, you can. Down here, there's a entire code. There's a PDF file so people can open the whole thing. You can also come up here to the top where it says State Board of Community College Code, and there's a little arrow. You can click on that arrow, and that will expand the manual, the code manual, and you can scroll down to find what you may be looking for. And so in this particular case, I'm going to scroll all the way down to local fees. There we go, right here. Subchapter 700 local fees. And so I'm going to click on that to bring that up. And then to make it easy, what happens when you click on it, it will also bring you up a little PDF file down here. So you can open that file. That makes it a little bit, to me, I like to open the PDF file. It's easier to navigate. So I'm opening that up. And so now we have the local fees as established by the State Board of Community Colleges. And this is the policy, again, that colleges have to follow. Now, this code, really, I've been with the community college system for almost 4.5 years, just under 4.5 years. And it has not, the local fees since I've been here has not changed much since I've been here. So what I want you to understand is that these policies have been developed over time. for many, many years. And there's historical
So
information. Whoop.
Well,
I'm hearing some background noise. Make sure that you will mute yourselves. Somebody is not muted. Make sure you are muted. I think I'm still here. Okay, good. So this policies have been set up for a number of years, and I don't necessarily have the whole history behind it. So I just wanted to make you all aware that, you know, these were discussed and developed over many years. So the first section here, and the way this is laid out, 700.1, this is just the general section, general provisions that directs broadly about college fees, local fees, and how these fees are to be established by the local boards of trustees at the colleges. They have to be deposited. Of course, the revenue has to be deposited into account. And also down here, letter E, it states that the college has to report annually on the local fees established. Okay. Now, after this first section, now we move into the specific fee sections. So 700.2 is specifically about the student activity fees. Here is where in the policy it states that local boards can establish a student activity fee. So this gives the local college boards the authority. It states that that student activity fee shall not exceed $35 per academic term. Okay, so that sets that and caps it at the $35. Then when you go on down to the next page, it goes into more detail about these fees. These student activity fees, it's obviously clearly have to support the costs of student activities. And then in section 1, it has a list of permissible activities that can be used with these fee revenues. These are examples of the student activities, as you can see, including student government, student clubs, student athletics, etc. So this is a list of examples of activities. Furthermore, in section 2, it also explains various examples of expenses. College personnel who support activities can pay for those costs. It can pay for stipends or scholarships for students. It can pay for employee and student travel for student activities. Equipment, vehicles, any vehicles used for student activities and equipment, and also capital improvement projects for student activities, space on the campus. Then it also lists in section 3 things that cannot specifically may not be used. These fee revenues may not be used. And then down in letter 3, this really has expired, but with the COVID outbreak pandemic back last year in March, the state board did authorize a special temporary rule to allow colleges to use their student activity fees to address any impacts from COVID-19. But again, that rule has now expired. It was extended for another 180 days. It was originally supposed to expire September 15th, you see here, of 2020. The board did extend it one more time, but it's now expired. So that last section, C, should no longer be applicable. Okay. Then moving down to instructional technology fees. So again, here, this policy allows a local board to authorize and establish an instructional technology fee that would support student access for instructional technology. And it also sets the maximum at $48 per academic term for curriculum students and $5 per course for continuing education students. And then down in section B, it explains the use of the fee. Fee revenue would be used to purchase, maintain technology for instructional purposes, and can also be used to hire personnel who are operating and maintaining the technology, and also any supplies and materials needed for those technologies. And again, there was some language added right here at the bottom that talked about using these technologies for fees for the COVID-19 outbreak specifically. That again was temporary, and that expires. But certainly student technology is already allowed to be, used based on the existing uses for those may be related to the pandemic, just in general to support students. If you're in online learning and there's instructional technology, that would already be an allowable use regardless of the pandemic. But anyway, that was added just as a temporary section. Then we move on to the next one, which is the college access, parking, and security fee, or we call it the CAPS fee. This, as you can see, is for parking, security, access, and this supports parking facilities at the college, parking enforcement, student transportation, and security at the college. I mentioned earlier at the beginning that these fees in this whole state board policy has not changed much since I've been here. But the one thing that was changed is in regard to this fee. Student transportation did not used to be listed in the fee. And the presidents, I think it was at least one college president wanted to add student transportation as a possible use. So that president discussed it with the other presidents through the finance committee of the President's Association. That was discussed as an idea. And then the President's Association, the whole association discussed it, and they did vote to endorse adding student transportation to this fee as a possible use. And so that was done, that was submitted as a proposal to the state board for consideration. It did go through a process of review with the state board. It got posted for public comment, so anybody in the public could comment on it. Anytime any rule here is changed, it does get posted on our and make it available for public comment by anyone. This is all handled by our legal staff at the system office. And that was ultimately added and approved to be added into this fee. So that's a relatively new section. And so these are the uses for the CAPS fee. And then further, there's a couple other areas I wanted just to point out. Required specific fees. These are not spelled out as far as specific listing of fees or dollar amounts. So these are locally determined, that whether or not those are needed, and those are for course specifically. Are there goods and services that are needed for a specific course or courses? So those are going to be determined by the local college. And then other fees. Means fees that are providing goods and services that are not required for enrollment, such as a health fee, an insurance fee, a graduation fee, transcript fee, etc. There's various other types of fees. Again, those are decided locally at the college. And then the last thing I wanted to just point out here in the state board code is this section about excess fee. So I think there was some questions that JJ shared about what if there is surplus fee revenue. And so this policy here addresses that. So there is a specific restriction if there are fee revenues that are collected in excess of the actual amount that was spent. And those excess fee revenues could only be used for the listed purposes here. which includes instruction, student support service, student financial aid, so that would include your scholarships, student refunds, student activities, and then there's several other items listed there. So the college can't just use that excess for anything they want to. It is restricted to this state board code. And I also thought I would share then the go back to the state board website. All right, running a little slow here. Just to I know I think several of y'all were already aware that we do provide a fee report, again, that's based on the state board policy or state board code that directs an annual report to the board. And in February, that is when we provide the report to the state board. So you can go on the state board's website, look under finance. It's always listed under finance for the month of February. See if I can get it to come up. Let me stop sharing for just a minute. Let me try it again. For some reason, it's freezing up on me. All right, let me try this again. Okay, so we'll go to the state board. And we'll go to the archives because we already had our March meeting listed here. So we got to go back to February. So we go to the archives for February. And we're going to click on finance. And we're going to scroll down and look for the annual survey of fees. And then you can look through this report, and this provides the information for each college in terms of the specific fees, which is the instructional technology, student activity, and the CAPS fee. This will provide the detail on each of those fee, how much was spent for each fee, and how much is charged as of the 2019-2020 year. So I will pause right there and see. I know I went through a lot of information. See what questions are out there. I know that, or JJ, do you want us to try to touch on some of the questions that you had already shared to kick us off?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
So I'll read the first question that was submitted to us, and it was, what is the process, or how do we advocate for raising the $35 cap per term of student fees? As you know, some institutions did not charge student fees this year, yet had expenditures. Additionally, more and more institutions are using student fees to support campus resources such as food pantries, clothing closets, etc. How do you foresee institutions replenishing their fund balances? And essentially, what is this process?
So I would say, as we talked about, the student activity fee is capped at the $35 per academic term. Now, not all colleges charge that. So that's a local decision of the college as to how much up to the $35 that they would like to charge. And certainly I think colleges are sensitive to, and the state board is very sensitive to not imposing an undue burden on students. And so I think that at least in recent history, in the conversations that I have been involved in, it has been not looked upon favorably as far as raising fees. So I would say, that in terms of a process to raise these caps, again, the two fees that have a cap is the instructional technology and student activity. The other fees are determined by each local college. But so the state board really is involved with the dollar amount for just the two. The process that has, as I kind of just touched on a little bit with the caps fee, where we added student transportation. Process historically, that's the only one that I've been involved in, but that process has been traditionally that the presidents of a college or multiple presidents may come discuss amongst themselves an idea of possibly increasing the fee. And that would be something that I think would be taken to the finance committee of the President's Association. And then they would discuss that and consider that. And then take it to, if the finance committee of the presidents recommended it, then it would go to the full presidents to recommend an increase. So I would say, certainly one option would be to have conversation with your college president if that's something that the college wants to consider pursuing. But I would say that right now I wouldn't give you a whole lot of optimism. I think the state board, again, they have been pretty not very interested in raising costs on students to the extent that they don't have to. So I think there's been concerns about that. So thus far, I've heard some discussion occasionally by president about, should we look at the fee rates? But thus far, I have not heard of any presidents asking to increase those caps.
Thank you for that insight. We'll skip around here. I'd like your input on this question. Many of our student life professionals are not included in administrative level positions regarding student fees. How would you advocate to their administration to be included in such topics as accessing the full budget or the partial budget that is decided by the CFO, or large expenditures from student fee revenue that do not include the student fee coordinator or student life coordinator or student input?
So I thought we did look at that question. I think, and I'll let Brandy maybe jump in on this one as well, Brandy Andrews. I think that each college really administers their process locally. So I think, and JJ, this is coming from students that are asking, is that right? Or who is asking? Do you know who's asking?
This was a student life professional. So
a student employee at the college. Okay,
yes,
yeah. So okay, so that I think that one possible option is to maybe talk with some of your colleagues at other colleges to find out what their process is. And you could, maybe use that to say, to talk with some surrounding colleges to say, I've talked with some of my colleagues and here's a process that they use, and bring that forth as a recommendation to your, be it your CFO or your president, whoever in your college administration is involved in making that decision. I think coming forth with a specific proposal or specific recommendation on how that works at other colleges might be beneficial. Brandy, anything else you might add in on that?
No, I mean, I think you've covered it from the standpoint of, we have 58 colleges and all 58 do something a little bit different when it comes to local management and decisions on their campuses. So it would really just be starting a conversation with maybe the leadership at your college, expressing your concerns and just trying to have that conversation locally, because it's kind of difficult for us to know specifically how to provide guidance when we're not involved in those local decisions here.
Absolutely.
There was a question from the chat. I believe it was regarding replenishing student fees, and it's, can CARES funds be used to replace student fees?
Okay, that's a great question. In fact, we were just meeting yesterday afternoon with the college business officers and I think most of the colleges had or most of them always have representation at that meeting. So under the federal funds, there's been a couple of awards to colleges. There's the CARES Act that awarded federal funds to colleges. And then in the end of December, there was the CRISA Act that provided a substantially even more funds to colleges to assist with the coronavirus. The funds, we call them the HERF funds, Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, specifically that are going to the colleges, is the specific program name of those. And those are coming from the U.S. Department of Education. Those funds are divided up into a portion that has to be used for student aid, and then another separate portion that can be used for institutional purposes. And there are various purposes spelled out. In the new CRISA Act that was passed, one of those purposes is called lost revenue. So if a college had a decline in revenue as a result of the pandemic, because, for example, their enrollment declined, and so they're not collecting as much fee revenue, then there is an ability of that college to use her funds for the institutional portion, not the portion for student aid, but for the institutional portion to replace that lost revenue. So the Department of Education actually on Friday, March 19th, just published a document on frequently asked questions regarding lost revenue, and it is multiple pages long. So the colleges, I think, are still looking at that, and we certainly still are, but it is available, and that would be an allowable use. The colleges just need to go through and read that carefully, that guidance document, to make sure how they would have to document it and keep records and show, how they calculated that lost revenue. So great question, very timely.
The next question on our list was, can you discuss the proper use of student fees in relation to scholarships? For example, can an institution choose to endow a scholarship using student activity fees?
Yes, so student activity fees, absolutely. Scholarships, when we were reviewing the state board code language, is an allowable use. So yes, that is an option for that college.
The next question on the list was, when the student fee report why is the student fee report captured mid-year? Is it possible for this report to be captured so it is more current as opposed to a year behind?
So I will jump in, and I'll let Brandy, if I miss out on anything there, she can correct me. But so the main reason why is because we have to collect. Okay, first of all, remember in the state board code, it says it's an annual reporting. Okay, so we have to collect the full year's data. We cannot collect the data until after the colleges have completely closed out their financial books. And that takes several months. After, surprisingly, you may be aware, you may not be aware, but our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th. And after June 30th, there's many, many things that the finance staff are having to do for a number of months to address the financial closing of the fiscal year that has just ended, including financial statements and work that has to be submitted for those. And so that typically goes into September. And so typically we would not be able to even start asking the colleges for their data until after that happens. at the earliest. And so I think that's one aspect. And then we have just, again, this predates, I think, Brandy, even in me, that, you know, we've had this process where we have reported it to the board in February. You know, it's possible we could try to push it up a little bit sooner, but it's not going to be at the exact same time, you know, as like July 1st. We're not going to be able to get that information that quickly, because it does take a lot of work. And keep in mind, we have 58 colleges. When we're collecting this information, there's a tremendous amount of data and spreadsheets. And so it's a lot of work to pull all of this information together to collect it and get the report prepared. So yes, I mean, theoretically, we might be able to push it up by 1 or 2 months as far as being able to actually complete the report. Plus, we have to have the report, you know, completely ready, edited, reviewed, and published out for the state board. So which takes time with our state board process. So Brandy, anything else you want to add on there? Or did I cover it?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, you definitely covered it. I think the context too is that keep in mind that at your colleges, you obviously have state funds, you have institutional funds. So when we get data from colleges on a monthly basis, we only get it for state funds. So all of the fees at colleges are living in the institutional funds account. So we do not have view of those or access to that data at any point in time in a given fiscal year. So it's definitely something that is much more time consuming and a manual process, because we're not getting it in electronic transmissions like we do our state funds. So like in this example that Elizabeth just described, you know, colleges are finishing their financials and their annual closeout in September. We are giving them, you know, we always like to give a decent amount of turnaround time for colleges to submit the data. So even if we get it in October, we're getting it some, say, mid-October, beginning or mid-October. That gives us, you know, November and December. And then as JJ and our system office staff know, when we're trying to go to a state board, we can't just have something ready the day before the meeting. We have to back everything up a whole month. And it essentially has to be ready a month before to fit our state board process and have things available. So it's definitely, I agree with Elizabeth that we can try to work to see if we could get that a month or two early. But if you've looked at, I know on Elizabeth's screen, she's showing you kind of the narrative piece of it. But if you look at the dollar amount, the attachments that show what we're trying to combine and create manually for all 58, I mean, it does just take us a little bit of time to manually process essentially 58 Excel files that are coming in, because it's coming from that institutional fund source. So, I mean, Elizabeth, I think you absolutely explained kind of what some of our struggles are with that. Of course, when we get things, if something doesn't look right, we have to ask questions. We have to follow back up with colleges. So we don't just take numbers for face value either. If we see a large variance from a previous year, we're trying to follow up with the colleges. We're waiting for them to research it, get back to us. And so that does unfortunately just take longer than maybe even it feels like it should.
Thank you for that insight. There's a question here from the chat. Is it correct that not every school requires early college, dual enrolled, or CCP students to pay student activity fees? Why is this, and how can we change this policy?
So I'm not 100% sure on that. I think that is probably true from what I have heard in talking with Dr. Lisa Eads in our programs division there in the system office. And I think it has varied from college to college. That's been a local decision. So I think that would have to be a conversation. And I don't recall who the I know she's now the AVP, so I don't recall who is in her old position. But I think that is a conversation that would probably have to happen. I mean, certainly could happen with the system office, but that would have to be something that all 58 colleges would agree to. And I don't know that all of the presidents would be willing to agree to either charge it or to not charge it. Quite honestly, based on some of the conversations that I've been privy to, I just think that would be a challenge. I expect that in some colleges or some situations, there may be some funding that is supporting that cost, maybe the LEA, or there may be foundation or other, there may be other sources of money where the fee is charged, but there may be a way that it's covered, whereas in other cases, it may have to be charged directly to the student. Of course, the only other thing I could think of would be, the General Assembly, the North Carolina General Assembly can decide in law what they want and not to do. I mean, the policies that our board have is only allowed because of the laws that we have that the legislature enacts. So that's another avenue. I don't know that I would recommend that, but the General Assembly has and does make changes to the CCP program. They have done that over time, expanding it or reducing it in different points in time. But yeah, that would be the only other option, would be if the legislature directed a certain policy.
Right. And I think if I can piggyback on that, Elizabeth, I think that what I've heard in conversations with colleges on this topic is that based on the legislature passing this as a waiver, so this is a student tuition waiver that is in legislation, that when they did that, many feel like at that point that the intent was for those students to come in and not pay. And that would be in line with the intent of the specific legislation. Now, while that only was listed as tuition, of course, we have our college fees that go with that. But just, I would say my understanding in talking to some of our college business offices is that, and I know that the MOU was mentioned in the chat box, there's a lot of just local politics or conversations going on with each college as well. But I think that some colleges feel like when the legislature passed that with the intent of a waiver, that they want to maintain that. Is just what I've heard from some colleges, speaking to them about their local situations. But it definitely does vary, as Elizabeth stated.
Thank you. The last question that was submitted, and then we'll open the floor up for anyone to sort of unmute themselves or ask questions while we have our experts on the phone, is, can you discuss the impact of the impact of a student receiving gift cards, raffle prizes, or other monetary support from their college, and how that impacts their student financial aid package? And I believe, Ms. Burgess, you're hiding on the line as well. Can you chime in with this answer?
I was hiding for a reason. Thank you, though. That would be the impact, if any, and there really is not any. It would actually be a local decision if you all wanted to include that in the student's financial aid award. As Mrs. Grovenstein has already shown you, those permissible activities, those stipends, scholarships, that type thing fall in line. So there really is no impact unless you all want to put it on the student's award. And then of course that would be your local decision, and you would definitely want to think about that before you take those actions.
While we have our experts here on the line, are there any questions from the audience that may have not been addressed, or something burning on your heart and your mind? Feel free to ask now. Going once? Going twice? All right. So with that, I'd like to thank Ms. Grovenstein, Ms. Andrews, and Ms. Burgess for, whoop, there was a question that popped up. Can a scholarship be used now or later? So can you expand on that question?
Yes, I was wondering, can they possibly, if we're trying to promote involvement with SGA and give the incentive of a scholarship, and say, for instance, they're in the early college or a CCP student, they don't really, can't use the scholarship while they're with us. So could they use it as they go on or transfer to a four-year institution?
In terms of the student activity fee revenue scholarships, those would be scholarships at the community college. So it would not be, that's my understanding. Brandy, do you agree? Not at
Yeah.
another institution.
Yeah, my understanding is that it means just at the college.
Okay, thank you. That clears that up. Thank you.
Any other questions? That one snuck in. All right, hearing none, I'll let Ms. Grovenstein, Ms. Andrews, and Ms. Burgess depart if they need to. Feel free to hang around. We did want to spend a few moments here on the line. I know we wanted to have some conversation regarding what programming or ideas that colleges are going to be looking towards as we are seeking to reopen in the fall. And so if you have any idea or vendors that you've already talked to, or things that you're going to try as we look to re-engage students on our campus, we wanted to have some time to discuss that type of programming here for the next, we'll say 15 minutes, and then we'll conclude right at noon. And so does anyone want to have a discussion regarding what they're going to be doing for this upcoming fall? You all are really never this quiet. I hear that, Tiffany. I hear a number of us are trying to ensure that we just make it through this semester safely and sanely. It is a bit early. I'm sure more ideas and things will come to fruition as we progress through the summer. Well, before we go, if there are no comments or thoughts, I can give you at least 13 minutes back in your day. And so I'll just leave the floor open for another 10 seconds to see if anyone has something on their heart and mind that they want to share with the group. And if not, I will bid you adieu and say, thank you for attending. Please take care and stay safe.
Can I share something really quick?
Sure, jump in.
Thanks. Just really quick. As some of you may know, we have M4C SGA this weekend. We just sent an email out, and we need some advisors who are willing to help with our interviews on Friday from 5 to 6:30. So if you are available, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Please let me know. And thank you to those who have already agreed to help us with those.
While we're on announcements, I'll give one announcement. I'll send an email as a follow-up to this as well. We've received a number of questions regarding when our class would be offered for the Student Leadership Development Program this summer. After some deliberation with our staff and our contacts at the Center for Creative Leadership, that course is going to be offered Wednesday at 1 p.m. till about, we'll say 2:15, 2:30. And that's every Wednesday, skipping the week of July the 4th. And so I believe it starts the first week in June, going through the last week of July, once a week on Wednesdays at 1, but I'll send out an email with a follow-up and all that additional information. As always, if you've never heard me say it, thank you for everything that you do for our students. Please take care, please stay safe, and I miss each and every one of you.